Hello dear patients, your favorite doctor here, Dr. Plague, and I'd like to welcome you to 2023. Last year was not the best in many aspects, but one thing we can all agree on is that it was a damn good year for video games. A lot of wonderful games got released last year, and today we're going to take a look at some of the best and worst games released in 2022. A little disclaimer, I can only talk about games I have actually played, so if you don't see your favorite game or a highly acclaimed masterpiece in this video, chances are that I haven't played it yet, or it's Xenoblade Chronicles 3, heyo! Also, there won't be any interruptions by the Nintendo ninjas in this video. I hope. So grab a plague-ridden snack, a refreshing potion, and relax, because it's time to give the Plague Awards for the best, the worst, and the maddest of 2022. I don't have a particular order to talk about these games, given that there's only one game that I can rank above all the others as the best game of 2022. However, to keep it varied, I'm going to talk about one good game and then one bad or disappointing game. So, let's start with the first good game I want to talk about, a little indie gem called Tunic. When you first take a look at this game, it's inevitable to compare it to old school Zelda games, and it's not a far-fetched comparison. This game takes the element of free exploration of the first Zelda game and handles it to perfection. You play as a little fox stranded on a mysterious island with nothing but a stick, trying to unravel the mystery of this new kingdom. Now, the exploration aspect might be heavily inspired on Zelda, but the storytelling aspect and combat of the game is most definitely inspired on Dark Souls. The game doesn't give you a clear direction on where to go or what to do, and you discover more about the world and even game mechanics by picking up game manual pages. This makes it a little confusing at times, and I even had to look up a guide after a certain point to be able to proceed, but the experience is very damn enjoyable. The controls are great, the combat is tight and responsive, and the bosses are a joy to battle. Definitely one of the best indie games of the year and a great experience overall. Now it's time to talk about the first disappointing game of the year. Another game that also tried a minimalist approach to storytelling but didn't pull it off nearly as well. Redo. This is a 2D platform game where you play as a girl in a desolated world with just one instruction: make it to the top of the city. Similar to Tunic, you don't get a clear explanation on what to do or how to get to the specific destination. However, the layout of the map is very confusing, and with some blocked areas you don't get any indication on how to overcome the obstacles. To make matters worse, the checkpoints in the game are very far from each other, making you backtrack a lot if you die, and the items you collect are reset to their original position if you die before reaching another checkpoint. It gets so confusing that I had to look for a video walkthrough in order to finish the game. This is one that looked promising but ended up under-delivering. And sadly, this will become a running theme in this video. The second good game that I played this year and that actually surprised me was Splatoon 3. I'm not a big multiplayer enthusiast, but I do like playing some games with my friends, and one of those games is Splatoon 2. The only problem I had with that game is that I found the single player campaign a bit lackluster. Well, apparently Nintendo heard the feedback because Splatoon 3 has a way better and more developed single player campaign. The story is nothing to write home about, but the variety of the challenges presented in each hub area is great. The boss encounters are also great and can be quite challenging, and the final boss is a multi-phase spectacle battle. In addition, the fact that Salmon Run is available all the time now is a great improvement. I haven't delved a lot into the multiplayer, so all I can say about it is,
I mean, it's alright,
gameplay-wise, it's the same Splatoon game we're used to after 2 games, but as the controls and overall feel of the games has always been so tight, you know what they say, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. Not straying far from Nintendo multiplayer offers, the second disappointing game of the year, which really hurt me a lot, is Mario Strikers Battle League. I was really happy and hyped when this game was announced. A lot of time had passed since the last Strikers game, and I loved Mario Strikers Charge for the Wii. It was the perfect soccer game for people who don't like soccer. When it comes to Battle League, I can't really say the game is bad. The controls are tight and you can pull off quite the tricks when you master the different maneuvers, and if you have friends to play, you will have a blast with it, especially if you play locally with another friend or on your couch with other 3 friends. My real problem with the game is that the content offered is so bare bones. In single player mode, you only get 5 cups, and after you beat them, you just get the opportunity to beat the same cups again, but in a higher difficulty. You might say that I expected too much from a Mario sports game, but no. Other sports games have had great single player modes, like the Mario Tennis or Mario Golf games. Even Mario Hoops 3-on-3 had a better single player offering than this game. Very disappointing indeed. Let's go back to indie offerings for our next 2 games. The third good game for this year is a great offering to the Metroidvania genre, one that I have a soft spot for, as you already know. This gem from Humble Bundle Games is called Moonscars. More Castlevania than Metroid, you play as a fallen knight in a desolate kingdom, looking for revenge on her creator for betraying her and sending her into an aimless endeavor. I know what you're thinking, this is just another common Metroidvania without offering anything new, and you're wrong. This game has some very interesting mechanics in the form of clay vestiges. You're a being made of clay separated from your original human body, so when you activate a portal, you go back to the safe haven of the game, and once you return to the recently activated portal, you have to kill a doppelganger with the same abilities that you have up to that point in order to recover your secondary skill. The game has an interesting story that is not as complicated to decipher as in other games of the genre. The combat is snappy, and even though the difficulty is brutal and can even feel unfair at times, it is extremely satisfying when you overcome every challenge. If you haven't checked it out, you can go ahead and download it from Game Pass. You won't regret it if you like tough as nail Metroidvanias. Another excellent game, another great disappointment, and this one is special given that I had been waiting for this game for over 5 years. Another game from Humble Bundle Games, Ghost Song is yet another Metroidvania that tries to add something new to the formula but under-delivers in spades. Ironically, this is more Metroid than Castlevania, as you take the role of an amnesiac bounty hunter in an unknown planet who has to gather pieces to repair a ship and get out from the planet. The story is nothing new, even though the mystery of finding out if there's a person inside that armor suit or if it's just a sentient AI kept me intrigued throughout my time with the game. The controls sometimes feel a bit floaty, but work fine for the experience. The things that I can't ignore in this game, however, are its dull exploration and its artificial difficulty. The environments in this game are not as vibrant as you would expect from an interspatial adventure, and the traversal of the areas is often interrupted by a tiresome number of annoying enemies. This gets even more aggravating given that the checkpoints are so inconveniently placed that if you die you might have to traverse half the map to get where you were at the moment of death. As for the difficulty of the game, it constantly throws multiple different enemies at you, and if there's something I hate in games, it's a gank. The bosses can be cheap as hell, with very fast, almost unavoidable attacks, high amounts of damage, and big chunky health. I didn't even finish this one. I stopped playing on the second to last boss because I just wasn't having fun anymore. Thank God this is on Game Pass, so I didn't waste my money on this disappointing mess. From this point on, there are no more bad games, just disappointing ones, but now you can be sure we're talking about the creme de la creme of this year, and there's not a better way to start than talking about one of my most played games of the year, Grounded. I mentioned this game in my video about spiders in video games, but it was just a superficial look, given that this game was on early access and saw its full release on September 2022. Also, my PC couldn't handle the game and I hate playing on PC. But since I got my Series S, I've been able to fully delve into the game, and holy mother of God, this game feels like a drug for how addictive it is. This is not just another survival game where you just try to survive as long as you can with no defined purpose. This game actually has a story where your main character, or characters if you're playing with friends, got shrunk down to an almost microscopic size and have to find out what happened and how to return to your normal size. In this game you explore a garden, which can seem like a small space to run around, but make no mistake, The world of this game is huge and you can do a variety of things like following the main quest, investigating different insects and exploring different areas of the garden, even though some equipment and upgrades are tied to completing the main quest. You can truly become the ruler of this garden and make it your home, or put your equipment in the dirt for the entirety of the game. The choice is entirely yours. I've put a considerable number of hours into this game and I'm nowhere close to finishing it, so this was truly a highlight. Also, as a final note, I cannot thank Obsidian enough for putting an arachnophobia mode in this game. Otherwise, I would have never been able to enjoy it. And if you fancy knowing more about spiders in games, check out my video about it. Top quality content right there, if I say so myself. The next game I want to talk about is not bad, just disappointing, and given that I already made a video about it not so long ago, I will keep it brief. Thymesia showed a lot of promise before its release, painting itself as a worthy Bloodborne-esque game with an interesting premise and great gameplay. Well, the gameplay is fun and the combat is excellent. However, the exploration is a bit lackluster due to the lack of variety and linearity of its levels. The story was a bit confusing, but that's expected for this type of Souls-like games. But the most disappointing part of the game is its lack of content. It took me around 8 hours to finish the game, taking on all the side quests in the levels, and I was left craving more game. Sure, this is not a big budget AAA release like Bloodborne, but I do believe some more care could have been put in the variety and amount of content in the game. I enjoyed my time with it. However, it wasn't nearly as enticing as I thought it would be. If you want a more in-depth analysis of the game, you can check out the video I made about it, which should be here over my head in this very moment. So far, this video has been very tame and without any controversial opinions, so let's stir the pot a little bit with a particular case of a game that counts both as one of the best and most disappointing games of the year. Oh yeah, I'm talking about Pokémon Scarlet and Violet. There's little I can say about this game that hasn't been said before, so... What is this? We got our first fan mail. We really made it to the top. Okay, this is a letter from Jenkins, and it reads, Dear Doctor, I write this letter because I have a pretty important question. How is it that you're talking about Switch games if your Switch has been broken for a while? God, I hope someone gets fired for that blunder. Well, Jenkins, first of all, how did you get my address? I'm gonna call the police. And second of all, every time that you notice one of those details, a wizard did it. Or I borrowed a Switch. Or more importantly,
What does it matter to you anyway?
as I was saying, Scarlet and Violet are very divisive games. When it was announced that we were gonna get full open world Pokemon games, everyone felt both excited and cautious. Game Freak did a great job with Legends Arceus, so the table was set for something at least good. So, what was the final result? A total technical disaster, yet one of the most enticing and entertaining games I've played all year. Let's start with the bad first. This game looks hideous, and I'm not cutting any slack on Game Freak, or even worse, blaming the hardware. The Switch launched in 2017 with Breath of the Wild, which looks way better than this game. Also, the Switch can run games like The Witcher 3, Doom 2016 and Eternal, Super Mario Odyssey and Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Hell, even Legends Arceus looks better than Scarlet and Violet, for God's sake. But apart from looking like ass, the game runs like ass as well. Frame drops, background NPCs running at 2 or 3 FPS, pop-in, graphical glitches. This game is a mess, and these issues can totally affect your experience when playing. But what happens when you leave all those issues aside? You have a truly open world Pokemon game, where you get 3 main quests at the beginning of the game and then you're free to do whatever you want. Wanna be the very best like no one ever was and earn all the gym badges and challenge the Pokemon League? Go ahead. Wanna go on a quest with a pal to bring down the 5 titans in the region and inadvertently get involved in one of the most heartwarming stories ever? Do it. Wanna take down the organization causing chaos all around the school and raid their 5 bases to take on the big boss? Be my guest. At first, After years of going from town to town in a specific order, such level of freedom was overwhelming. But then I found myself running for my life after getting to an area I wasn't supposed to be in yet, risking my entire team just to get a Larvitar 5 levels higher than all my team, and overall enjoying exploring the region freely and finding interesting destinations, Pokemon roaming freely and all. So, at the risk of getting an angry mob at my unspecified location, I give these games my honorary badge of being one of the best and one of the most disappointing games of the year at the same time. I know Game Freak will never get this game at a decent performance via patches, but I still recommend delving into the Paldea region and building your own opinion from experience. At this point, I haven't played any more games from 2022 that I can find bad or disappointing, so I'll just go ahead and talk about the game I found as the second best game of the year, and that is Triangle Strategy. I must say that I absolutely love pixel art, and this whole HD 2D refined art style for games is just the best thing to ever happen. Back when this game was revealed, I immediately labeled it as Tactical Octopath Traveler, but since I haven't played Octopath Traveler yet, can't really know if the comparison is true. What I do know is that this game is like having a Song of Ice and Fire as a tactical turn-based RPG, and that's a winning combination for me. We enter the continent of Norcelia as a peace agreement is taking place between the three most important countries, when suddenly the region of Aifrost decides to do a coup d'etat, kill the king and the royal family except for the princess and take over the kingdom. We take control of the group led by Serenoa of House Wolford, who must help Prince Roland, the only surviving son of the late king, to retake the kingdom and put an end to this new war once and for all. The gameplay is what you'd expect from a tactical RPG. You move on a grid and control a group of maximum 10 units with different goals like defeating all enemies, travel from one side of the map to another, or defeating a specific enemy. You can play around with different elemental abilities, different terrain, consumable items, and other things to take the upper hand in the battle and ensure your victory. Unlike many other games in the genre, there is no permadeath mechanic in the game, with the only punishment for losing a unit being no more levels earned for said character for the rest of the battle and a numerical disadvantage in comparison to the enemy troops, which I find it a lot more balanced than in other games. I do have to emphasize that this game features a lot of text and reading due to its heavy story-focused approach, but the story itself is so interesting that it's not really an issue, even though it has a very slow start, but is full of royal intrigue, backstabbing, cloak turning, and the likes of such literary tropes that made series like A Song of Ice and Fire so popular and well received. After spending more than 60 or 70 hours with this game, I still haven't reached the end of the story, yet I'm not feeling burnt out in the slightest. This is definitely a game that deserves more attention and praise. I think I've rambled on for long enough, so I'm going to do some honorable mentions real quick, divided in two categories. First of all, I want to acknowledge some games that I know are great and that I would have liked to play this year, but couldn't due to either not having time, money, or a PS5. So let's give a big shout out to Pokemon Legend Arceus, Horizon Forbidden West, Bayonetta 3, Mario Plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope, God of War Ragnarok, High on Life, Evil West, Live a Live, Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga, Stray, Cult of the Lamb, Jack Move, and Pac-Man World Repack. And last but not least, I want to mention some great games that I played this year but haven't been able to dedicate a lot of time to them, so I can't really talk about them in detail. So take off your top hats and show some respect to Midnight Fight Express, a beat 'em up with an isometric view with frantic gameplay, an interesting story, funny dialogue, and full of pop culture references and Easter eggs. Definitely a good play to release some stress. Soldiers, a Metroidvania 2D side-scrolling game with Souls-like combat, where you explore a fallen kingdom and visit a number of picturesque locations. Hard as nails but fun with smooth combat. Sports Story, the long-awaited sequel to Golf Story, released just in time for Christmas. You embark on a grand adventure but with more sports than just golf. If you liked Golf Story, you're gonna love this one. And Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, The DLC expansion for this game was huge, and it's still missing some content to be released at the date of recording. New monsters, a new locale, a new story that can be enjoyed either solo or co-op, and Master Rank, which will put your skill to test with more aggressive monsters and variants of both new and old monsters. This is just the kind of meaty expansion the base game needed to revitalize itself. Just try to play some hunts on high rank before stepping up to the challenge because the new content is hard as hell. And now, I've been saving the best for last, the game that I consider the best of 2022. And if you've paid attention to the entries in the video and the honorary mentions, you already know that I'm missing one little game. To absolutely no one's surprise, the Plague Award for the best game of 2022 goes to none other than Elden Ring. As with Scarlet and Violet, there's nothing I can say about this game that hasn't been said before. This is truly a modern masterpiece of gaming. The formula for Souls games always works so far, with great linear level design with some alternate routes for exploration, but Elden Ring came right in and said fuck this and changed things over. Now, instead of an interconnected world of various levels, you have a fully fledged open world to explore at your pace and get absolutely wrecked by everything on sight. The gameplay is mostly the same, with some additions like the ability to jump, Ashes of War to give additional skills to your weapons, horseback traversal and combat, spirit summons to aid you in battle, and great runes gained from some bosses to boost up certain stats or skills. You play as a lowly Tarnish, you don't know shit about what's going on, and then you realize that you're fighting to either bring the lands between to their former glory or absolutely doom them to annihilation. You know, typical From Software stuff. The lore is intricate as always, and the design of both the overworld and the legacy dungeons, which are the places that most resemble typical more linear Souls levels from previous games, is amazing. The variety of enemies is also good, apart from some very annoying ones. Looking at you, revenants and lobsters, you absolute dickheads. But getting apart from my bias for a moment, I can't say the same about bosses. Sure, there are a lot of bosses in the game, some of them unique, but most of them repeat throughout the adventure, being in catacombs or caves as reskins with different elements or attacks, or even worse, as bosses in the main story. Looking at you, Godskin Duo, you absolute pieces of filth, sons of a motherless goat. Another problem related with the bosses is the inconsistent difficulty of some of the late game encounters. FromSoft have always been masters of their craft, designing balanced and tight bosses, but with some of the bosses in the game, you feel like fighting an uphill battle, with bosses that deal way too much damage, even to the point of reducing your overall HP, are devilishly fast, and have gargantuan health bars. And don't even get me started on the final boss, which in my opinion is the worst final boss in any Souls game. But apart from that, I have to say that this game grabbed me like no other game has ever grabbed me before. I played it for almost 50 hours on the launch weekend and took 120 hours to do my first run. Since then, I did one New Game Plus run, an entirely new run, and I'm in the middle of doing yet another run from the beginning. I've spent almost 300 hours playing this game, and, except for some particular bosses, I have a blast all the time. It's amazing how the developers managed to change the formula so drastically and still hit it out of the park. For this and all the fun and challenging times that it delivered this year, Elden Ring is my best game of 2022. This has been all for today, my patients. Do you agree with my picks for best and most disappointing games of the year? What is the best game of 2022 for you? Let me know in the comments below. 2023 already looks to be a great year for games, and I'm excited for the future and yet another year sharing my thoughts with you and hopefully getting my Switch back from the clutches of the Nintendo ninjas. And remember, one game a day keeps the plague doctor away. See ya!